My fiancée demanded a prenup that took everything I owned. I refused to sign it, and now she's turning everyone against me. At 35, I genuinely believed I was finally settling into the life I had envisioned during my early 20s. After years of grinding in the tech industry, I had landed a stable position as a senior software engineer in Austin, Texas. I had my own townhouse, a couple of reliable investments, and enough savings to feel secure. For nearly 3 years, I was engaged to someone I thought shared the same vision for the future. We were building something, or so I believed. She was everything I thought I wanted: intelligent, confident, beautiful, and ambitious. For the sake of the story, let's call her Elle. When we first met, our connection felt seamless. We talked about the future often: marriage, starting a family, building a life together. I thought we were aligned in every way that mattered. But things began to unravel in the most unexpected way. Over a prenup. Let me be clear. I've never been opposed to prenuptial agreements. In fact, I think they can be a smart move in today's world. People have a right to protect what they've worked for, especially when entering a legally binding contract like marriage. However, the way she introduced the subject was unsettling. There was no discussion, no joint planning, just a signed draft from her lawyer handed to me with a firm "we need this" attached. At first I approached it rationally. I assumed it would outline fair protections for both of us. But as I read through the document, the pit in my stomach grew heavier with every clause. It wasn't a mutual agreement. It was a financial ambush. The prenup was written to ensure that in the event of a divorce, she would walk away with a substantial portion of my life. She'd gain ownership of my townhouse, receive half of my savings, and even demanded a stake in my investment portfolio. Her own assets, however, were strictly off-limits. Even any debt we might accrue together would be solely my responsibility. I tried to convince myself that there had to be some kind of misunderstanding. This couldn't be her genuine intention. But when I asked her about the terms, she was indifferent. In her eyes, it was standard. She insisted her lawyer said it was fair and that it was just about protecting herself. What baffled me most was her complete lack of empathy or willingness to adjust any of the terms. The more I pressed, the more it became clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated move to secure as much of my life as possible, just in case things didn't work out. And when I pushed back, her stance only hardened. She told me plainly, if I didn't sign, there would be no wedding. It was like a switch flipped inside me. 3 years of memories, of laughter, of shared dreams, all of it now reduced to a contract with lopsided benefits. I realized that this wasn't just about a prenup. It was about how little she valued me beyond what I could provide. Marriage, for her, had become a business deal. I ended the engagement that night. I packed a few things and left. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but deep down, I knew it was the right one. The silence in the days that followed was both comforting and haunting. I tried to focus on moving forward, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. It started subtly. Friends who used to call regularly suddenly stopped reaching out. Mutual acquaintances became distant. Rumors began trickling in. According to Elle, I was the villain. The narrative she spread painted me as selfish and commitment-phobic. She claimed I refused to share my wealth and that I abandoned her when she tried to establish mutual security. At first I brushed it off. I assumed people would see through the act. But the lies kept growing, and so did the damage. Former friends began distancing themselves completely. Some even believed the outrageous claim that I had financially exploited her during our relationship. I was shocked by how quickly people turned. One day I received a call from my cousin, who'd heard that I had taken money from Elle and then dumped her. That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay silent. I had to defend myself, not out of spite, but because my entire character was being dragged through the mud. I reached out to Elle, hoping there was still some shred of decency left in her. I wanted her to stop spreading lies. But when she finally responded, she was disturbingly calm, as if nothing unusual was happening. In her view, what she was saying wasn't false. It was simply her interpretation of events. "You didn't sign the prenup," she said. "That means you couldn't commit. I'm just telling the truth." There was no point in arguing. Her mind was made up, and the damage had already been done. Left with no other choice, I decided to open up to a few close friends. I showed them the prenup, walked them through the actual events, and let the facts speak for themselves. Slowly, some began to see the truth. The story she'd been telling started to unravel. Those who genuinely cared saw that I wasn't the heartless man she portrayed. I was someone who narrowly escaped a life of manipulation and financial exploitation. But even with the truth out, not everyone came back. Some friendships were irreparably damaged. Others simply faded away, tainted by the false narrative they once believed. The emotional toll was heavier than I expected. Months passed, and I started rebuilding. The experience left scars, but it also taught me lessons I couldn't have learned otherwise. I realized how easy it is to ignore red flags when you're invested in someone emotionally. I recalled how she'd often ask about my financial details, how much I had in savings, what my portfolio looked like, even how much I was earning from side gigs. I had chalked it up to curiosity, maybe even interest in planning a future together. But now I saw it for what it truly was: calculation. She also had a tendency to push for an expensive lifestyle, luxury getaways, high-end shopping, constant dining out. I often felt uncomfortable with how much money she wanted to spend, but I ignored it, thinking compromises were a part of every relationship. In hindsight, it was another sign I overlooked. These red flags weren't just annoyances, they were clues to her priorities. And I chose not to see them until it was almost too late. Today, I live with more caution. I still believe in love and partnership, but I approach them with a clearer perspective. Trust is no longer something I give blindly. And when my gut tells me something is off, I listen. If there's one thing I want others to take away from my experience, it's this: no matter how much history you share with someone, your values and principles should never be compromised. If someone pushes you to sign something that doesn't feel right, or uses love as leverage to gain control, walk away. It's not love, it's strategy. What I went through wasn't just a broken engagement, it was a wake-up call. And I'm grateful I answered it before it was too late. Thanks for sticking with the story. If you're interested in hearing more real-life experiences like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel. You never know. You might just learn something that saves you from a future disaster.